All right, is Eternals a misfire? Or will Marvel be eternally grateful that they have this film?
Hey, you're not funny.
I'm sorry, I just...
Listen, your puns are getting old, and people are tired of them.
Sure, but I love puns, and I love cringeworthy dad jokes. Is that a problem? I
You
mean...
better start doing something new, because it's going to take an eternity to win people back.
I don't... Okay. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking the brand new MCU film, and that is Eternals. Eternals. I just want to say it like that. I need you guys in the comments down below. This is a spoiler-free review, and if you like this video, let me know. Drop your thumbs up. We're on the road to 100K. We're almost there. That's not important. I want to talk about Eternals. So, Eternals follows a group of heroes from beyond the stars who have protected the Earth since the dawn of man. When monstrous creatures called the Deviants, long thought lost to history, mysteriously return, the Eternals are forced to reunite in order to defend humanity once again. This cast is insane. Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Kumail Nanjiani, Brian Tyree Henry, Barry Keoghan, Salma Hayek, of course, Angelina Jolie, Kit Harington. I could go on. I've probably missed a handful. But that's how stacked it is. And, of course, the name of note here is Chloe Zhao. Everyone knows who she is at this point. Won the Oscar last year. A phenomenally talented director. I was super excited to see this pairing and how it could potentially change the landscape of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't know why Eternals makes me want to talk in that voice. And this is a movie that I had really high expectations for. And oftentimes when a movie performs below your expectations, you can walk out and just feel completely deflated and crushed. And it's probably my fault for being so hyped. Austin, why are you talking like this? Well, I was, in a way, disappointed with the fact that Eternals did not end up being this triumphant epic that I had hoped it would be. And I think the exciting thing here was just the mixture of so many different talented individuals, down from bringing in the composer from Game of Thrones, incredible director of photography, of course, this cast, this director, all of those things, and the fact that you don't have to pay as much attention to the rest of the universe. Now, do I love when the other movies do that? Yeah, I'm a sucker for a larger universe like that. That's why I love DC and Marvel, but seeing the possibility of Eternals doing something different was interesting. Now, does the film falling just short of my expectations mean that I didn't like the movie? Not necessarily. I actually found a lot of things to enjoy about this film. And even those certain moments, and it's really just the overarching ideas, right? Even though those can come across as messy, essentially you're trying to fit, 7,000 years of history into one movie? That's a very ambitious concept. And we've seen a lot of ambitious films this year, from Dune to now Eternal. So trying to do that all in the span of 2 hours and 30 minutes is a very difficult task. And even though I believe it does bounce around just a bit too much, what they were able to do and the ideas that they were able to present to us really tickled my fancy. That sounded weird. You see, I love the idea of exploring the history of these characters, the concept of these Eternals being essentially gods among men. A concept that we really don't often explore as much in the MCU, even though it's full of gods, like Thor, the God of Thunder, but it feels in that way more of like what DC has been doing as of late, essentially what Superman was in that universe. And funny enough, there are numerous DC references in this film. It's like Batman and Superman comics exist in this universe, which was interesting, but at the same time, tonally, and the integration of a couple of these things, and really just the power set of the characters, comparing Icarus to Superman, comparing Makari to Flash, you could make those comparisons and it would make all of the sense in the world. And then just the idea of this movie being darker. I say visually with a bit of hesitation there, because a lot of these scenes use natural lighting as opposed to what we're normally getting in the MCU. So it doesn't mean the color grading is purposefully darker. It's just coming across as that because you're not using as much artificial lighting. So visually darker, tonally darker. The stakes feel really high with this film. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you don't really know which member of this team is going to make it until the end of the movie in that way, and not spoiling the actual progression of the film here. I felt the same way about these characters as I did the characters in Rogue One, right? Well, Rogue One, you kind of knew where a lot of that was headed, but with this movie, I'm like, okay, anyone could go at any moment, because that disconnect from the larger universe is felt throughout the movie, but you also have your MCU isms, and some of those MCU isms are good for the film. Others, they may not work as well because they're kind of butting heads with that drastically different tone at other times in the film. Because there are moments in this film that get so serious and so adult, a lot of adult moments within Eternals. You even get a great PG-13 sex scene. So, for everyone, no. A lot of romance, a lot of relationships explored. A couple that I wish they would have hit on a bit more, but the main one here is Cersei and Icarus. Their relationship, and it's showcased in the trailers, not a spoiler, but the way that progresses over time and seeing them throughout the years and exploring all of the integral moments in all of these characters' lives is a lot, because there are a lot of characters. There are a lot of members of the Eternals, and because of that, certain characters are going to feel shortchanged. That's just the way it is. But I believe as much as they had to accomplish here with as many characters, I thought they did a really good job of fleshing so many of them out and allowing us to get to know who they are without cramming too much into the point to where it feels overstuffed. It definitely doesn't feel overstuffed in terms of characters, maybe in terms of time periods, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. Now, one thing the movie chooses to do, and I think this is the biggest flaw that I'm seeing, and I've not actually read any reviews, I've just been seeing tweets on my Twitters. Follow me, at the Burkenator. Or don't, you probably shouldn't. Is that this movie bounces around. We go to BC, to AD, to now, to 2,000 years ago, to 1,000 years ago, and it doesn't really follow a specific order. And I'm sitting back wondering as the movie is progressing, I'm saying, what if they were to do this chronologically? Would it take away some of the magic? Because I like the fact that they're trying to switch it up, and I like the fact that they're trying to do something different. But with them doing that, there are things that characters will do, and you don't necessarily feel the implications of that as strongly because we have yet to explore that character in detail. And then a bit later on in the movie, we get that flashback that shows us who that character was, and that's the point where you're like, oh, that's what the implication was in that scene earlier, but that takes place out of order. And I feel like if the movie would have presented that in a chronological way, maybe that would have made that moment specifically just a bit better, and that happened 2 to 3 times throughout the movie. I'm like, I wish they would have done that differently. But I wasn't bothered as much by the, and I'm going to use the word here, messiness of the way the movie was presented, because the ambition of that was interesting enough for me to overlook that. Still definitely a nitpick and a flaw, but not one that is bothering me, I believe, as much as other people. So in that way, yes, the story is messy, absolutely, and there is a lot of story here. But I believe the characteristics of the characters, the characteristics of the characters allows the film to overcome some of those messy story problems. You look at Icarus and Cersei, like I said, the relationship is great. Gemma Chan is outstanding. Angelina Jolie as Thena, a bit of a surprise here. I thought maybe she would do too much, try to be that superstar. Not really the case. Her character was actually really fascinating. Salma Hayek is really good. Kit Harington. McHugh as Sprite, solid at times, at other times didn't quite work for me. Barry Keoghan, one of my favorites in the business. I love this guy. I felt like the dialogue delivery was off at points throughout this movie. Still ended up liking his character, and the trajectory of his character was fascinating because they did some things that I thought were really interesting, but at the same time, I do wish the performance handled it just a bit differently. Ma Dong-seok and Lauren Ridloff are really good. I wish their roles would have been larger, but they're solid. The two that stole the show for me, and this is another complaint that I'm seeing on Twitter that I'm just not necessarily there on, I thought the humor in this movie was good. Like, genuinely good. It didn't feel as forced as some of the other movies in the MCU. Kumail Nanjiani is outstanding. I was laughing so hard at his character. Not only his character, they compare him to Batman's Alfred, his little butler throughout the movie, played by Harish Patel, who was so funny. That relationship was great. And then Brian Tyree Henry, who is subtly funny, which I really, really enjoyed. but he's the one that you kind of care about the most, even though he's not in the movie for quite a while. When he gets his due time, he's really the only one that doesn't feel as much of a lone wolf as the others, so there's a connecting factor there that allows you to feel the stakes just a bit more, so I thought he handled that brilliantly. And then the big thing here, and what I've been able to kind of sit and process, think about after the movie ended, getting to sleep on it, the idea of these characters feeling this burden, the weight of the world, literally on their shoulders, a celestial being, and you've seen in the trailer, a character in which they kind of serve their purpose for, and that relationship, what they have to do, and the concept of seeing the good in humanity that we've seen plenty of times before, but making certain decisions in this film and feeling that conflict with certain characters, and I'm trying to tiptoe around spoilers as best as I can, really hit home with me. Now, certain moments were predictable, absolutely, but at the same time, there are a couple things that happen in this third act, and there is a bit of a lull in the second act. It starts to pick back up in the third. Completely surprised me. And how often can I say that in a comic book movie where I'm like, yeah, I genuinely didn't see that coming, because most of the time, you see things coming. So the idea that, yes, I can be more than this, but do I have to follow my set path? And I think Gemma Chan's character, Cersei, did a wonderful job of conveying that. Other than Kumail and Brian Tyree Henry, and I think she's even the lead of this film, she does a wonderful job and is very compelling with those ideas. Also, you get into the third act and, all of those ideas are at play and the themes are definitely there. That's when it started to feel more like the MCU for me, because we do get a big third act battle. Now, it's a very different battle, and there's one character that you see throughout the movie progressing into something bigger and better. And that story arc was really the only story arc that I didn't care about, and I kind of wish that story arc wasn't in the movie. Otherwise, they all come together. There is a clash. That was the point. So many practical effects, so many beautiful landscapes. The visual effects here are immaculate at points. Absolutely incredible. But that's when you really start to see the CGI, I think, a bit more. And it's not bad. It just kind of shines through. So I do wish it would have been handled differently, but I did like seeing the power set of certain characters in that third act, so that's where I'm kind of conflicted. But from a story perspective, I believe the third act is the strongest just because of what all the characters are dealing with, and then what it sets up for the future. I will not talk about the post-credit scenes. I will not. But what it sets up for the future. And again, you're going to see the critic scores, the Rotten Tomatoes scores, and the early reactions, and I was a bit bummed out when I saw the first reactions, so I guess I went into this movie with lowered expectations, and that's why I came out saying, yeah, it was good. I mean, it wasn't the top-tier MCU movie that I wanted, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Let's go over to IMDb and see what's going on there. Okay, movie's not out yet. All right. Also, yeah, hard to believe I haven't mentioned her name that much, but Chloe Zhao, right? You feel her touch, her distinct visual style. I do wish the exposition and again, that messiness of the script would have been handled just a bit better, and in that vein, that's where some of my disappointment spawns from, but you still feel that she is just so talented behind the camera, does an incredible job, and brings in a great composer to handle the score. I wish there was more of that score throughout, but the score itself is just phenomenal. Gosh, I am so curious to see what you guys think about this film. A divisive MCU movie. How often do we get that? But I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. Eternals is a lot to take in. This film is massive on every level, both with its story and scale. At times, the narrative can come across as messy, but its heart always shines through. Zhao has crafted something so different from the rest of the MCU, and I'm honestly here for it. I'm going a 76% with my score. Do I wish it was higher? Yeah, I do, but I enjoyed the film. I like the fact that it did feel so different, yet at times so similar. So let me know what you guys think down below. What did you feel about the Eternals walking out of it? When you see it, come back and let me know. And if you guys would like to see a spoiler review, I would love to talk about some of those things, including the post-credits scene. If you enjoyed this video, drop your thumbs up. That really does support this channel. Tells me you want to see more. And hey, guess what? Plenty more things coming. Maybe a celebration of sorts soon? I don't know. We'll have to see. Tier lists. Tier lists are coming. Get your tier lists here. I'll see you soon.